A hearty Yorkshire welcome.
Thank you.
Sally, very, very happy to welcome you here, delighted to welcome you here to the festival, and particularly to be able to give you this award for your immense and varied body of work, which of course we're going to merely dip into this evening, and of course talking about some of the work and insights that are in Naked Cinema, your book that's just been published, where you were talking to actors. Do you want to say something about how that came about, that project came about?
Well, the book Naked Cinema and its title comes from the desire to really strip away a lot of what we think of as the white noise of cinema back to its essentials, really back to the skeletal principle of watching a human in a frame with an intense, structured kind of curiosity. And the book was a decision to explore some of what really is a quite hidden world of what happens behind the scenes in the relationship between a director and an actor in structuring a performance. And it was based on the principle that if you reveal all your secrets, everything that you know, even greater mysteries come up from behind to be looked at. There's nothing to be afraid of, in a way, of laying it all bare. So the first half of the book is a skip and a hop through all the different phases for a director of working with an actor, from the very first imagining of an actor in a role, through the casting process, rehearsal process if you have one, the shoot, and even the last moment when you go to a premiere with your actors and look at what you've done and face up to what you've done together. And the second half of the book is interviews with 14 of the wonderful actors that I've worked with, looked at from the whole process, from their point of view, from Judi Dench to Jude Law and Timothy Spall and many other wonderful actors, all of whom have different things to say and some very similar things to say. That's what the book is. It was my attempt to, in a way, give out some of the things that I've learned in practice that I wish I had known when I started out.
That sense of knowing irony and sly humour, that was there, wasn't it, previously in something like Gold Diggers, with the wonderful Colette Lafont and her style of delivery.
Gold Diggers, by and large, was a much harder experience for most people. It was perceived as a very cerebral and obtuse thing, and it was a conscious, long and difficult path for me to decide to try and make something that was more entertaining, more pleasurable for people, less obstacles, not less difficult once you look at the themes. I mean, the themes are Virginia Woolf's themes, but they're the themes of immortality, of seeing maleness and femaleness as a kind of performance, a construction, seeing history itself as a sequence of stories told by people in power, so therefore history is really left out of history as we read it, and so on. These are not easy themes, but she wrote them in her book in a tone of lightness and with an address to the reader: dear reader, you may be thinking such and such or whatever.
That's shown with that same complicity and inclusive address, I feel, in terms of trying to reach out to the audience, particularly in Julie Christie and her performance at the centre of that. And there was something about when she talked about and bringing her great understanding about cinema, by casting somebody who was already a star in the centre of a very experimental, very avant-garde sort of film. What was some of her first responses when you talked to her about that role?
Well, first of all, I don't know how I had the cheek to approach her, quite honestly, but I did. And her first response when she read this was kind of, this looks interesting, but what on earth is it about? For her, it was a great bold step to decide to be in this film with this weird script written by these three women, young women approaching her. But I think she loved the idea of taking part in something that was both ambitious and risky.
We're going to see a couple of quite different audition clips in a moment. Is there anything that you could describe that you look for in those
when I'm first meeting an actor?
Interactions?
Well, it takes, meeting the actor is you're already a very long way into the process. I mean, maybe sometimes when I'm writing, I'm already imagining an actor. I feel I can see them in the finished film. It's a fait accompli. They don't even know I'm thinking about them yet. And that turns out sometimes to be right and sometimes to be a false imagining. Yeah. Then it comes down to, the script is ready, it looks like it's all going to go ahead, it's almost greenlit or is greenlit, then you go into casting mode seriously. And then it's just a huge amount of research. Before I get anywhere near meeting an actor, I will have watched everything that I can lay my hands on that they've ever done, and of many of them. And that includes people behind the camera too, by the way, casting the team, the crafting team. But the moment of an audition, of a first meeting, is a very magical moment, because not necessarily how the person does it, what they say, what they do. It's more like instinct comes into play. You sit in the room, you're both eyeing each other up, and I'm superimposing the image of the role on this person, what they're able to do at that moment, and thinking, is this going to work? Could this work? And some actors kind of give themselves to you in this way that is, right from the start, that is so moving and energizing and beautiful.
So the trust is there.
Then you think, okay, we can do something together, because you know that everything you're going to do is going to be held in the context of a relationship that you can nurture, you can steer, you can do this, you can do that. But there has to be a willingness in the first instance. This quality of love that has to be there between you and an actor to create the territory, the earth, if you like, the very soil out of which something's going to come.
Yes.
And some directors, I think, mistakenly think they're going to get some shortcut to a great performance by being horrible to an actor, terrorizing them, because then they'll look frightened. You get much better fear if you are kind and help an actor to connect with memories of fear. You're going to get something coming from the inside.
Yes.
An empathetic leap into the soul and heart and mind of somebody else, rather than a visceral, sudden shock reaction. From the very first meeting with an actor, one is in a rehearsal process. You're working. And every phone conversation, every email, every costume fitting, every casual interaction that you have is a rehearsal.
Yeah.
Because basically you're minute by minute, second by second, building a relationship. The way that you look at an actor, the way you appreciate or don't, if your attention is elsewhere, if you're unfocused, if you communicate that something else more important is happening over here by turning away, all these things are part of what will eventually become visible on screen. It's not just a totally permissive thing, oh, aren't you gorgeous, anything you do. No, you're trying to steer all this gorgeousness into one very, very precise, razor-sharp surgical strike of a take that is going to fit into the vision as a whole that you've already been working on for years.
You talk about the inner score of films, I noticed, and of course the immense importance of music to you and to your inspiration in your filmmaking. Is that something to do with learning about the rhythms of films and fitting actors' performances into those rhythms, do you think?
I think that every director is a choreographer all the time, because you're making decisions about movement or stillness through space, the camera moving, the actors moving, left, right, left, up, down, close, far. All these are choreographic decisions looked at in a certain way. And everything to do with pacing is a musical decision. When to be silent, when to be slow, when to be speedy, all these, and have a feeling for the overall arc of the pacing of it, even when you're shooting it in tiny little fragments, often out of order. You've got to keep that inner kind of metronome going in your head about the pace. Or this has got slow, or this has gone too fast, or whatever it may be. They are musical decisions in a way.
Have you ever regarded that you're trying to create a new cinematic language, or a different alternative cinematic language, and how does all that fit in with that?
Well, the the cinematic background that I came from in my early filmmaking life, after I'd made my little 8mm things when I was a teenager, was the London Filmmakers Cooperative, who were very engaged with structuralist cinema and with the cinematic language itself, you know, 24 frames a second, the signified, and lots of things that I puzzled about and puzzled my way through. But it made me always very aware that I could take nothing for granted. I didn't have a filmmaker, I didn't go to film school or anything, so I had no grounding in, you know, shot, counter shot for example, for shooting a dialogue scene. Why? Why does it have to be shot, counter shot? Why does it have to be far, medium, close? To get so-called closer, you know. So for me there were always question marks over the syntax of filmmaking itself, and that there were often more inventive or interesting ways to shoot something that got more to the core of the scene. The starting point for me always in a script or in a scene or moment to moment is what is necessary. In design terms, it's, you know, form following function. So what's the function of this scene? What form therefore does it need to take? And to work in that way. That sometimes has led to breaking all kinds of weird cinematic rules. There may be a slightly perverse element in me too, because, for example, to write a whole screenplay in verse is total taboo. You know, tons and tons of words on screen, not good. Or, you know, and multiple other times that I've broken rules of one kind or another. Or Rage, we haven't seen the clips from it, but was the first film ever to be premiered on mobile phones. And this was at the time when a lot of filmmakers were jumping up and down going, mobile phones and the internet, the death of cinema and stuff. And I was going, I think it's rather exciting, actually. What feels to me the struggle is to be true, which doesn't necessarily mean being real. But to be, you know, authentically true, and to have something which has a sense of purpose, even if nobody knows knows what it is, even if you don't know what it is. To daily be in pursuit of that, and to follow the impulse of longing, and not the impulse of career moves, for example.
Going back to the Gold Diggers, I was very interested to read in the programme notes about the critical reaction to the film when it was first released. And I wonder whether you would share with us, Sally, how that affected your artistic journey as a filmmaker at that time in your life.
I'm still dealing with the critical reaction of the Gold Diggers. People close to me will inform you that whilst I can remember word for word some slashers at the time, I've long since forgotten all the praise. You know, there's something about criticism, negative criticism, especially if it's personal, like a personal attack. It's very, very difficult not to be very wounded by it, and to feel so misunderstood when what you've tried to give out to the best of your ability is something that comes from, in a way, a quite pure motivation, a real desire to put something out into the world that's a gift of some kind, that means something. You have to, in your journey as a filmmaker, learn to be fucking courageous, excuse my language. You have to be prepared to take the knocks. You have to learn to accept rejection. You have to learn that some people will take things very, very personally. I actually had people spitting at me as they came out of screenings of the Gold Diggers at the time. Actual gobs of spit landed on me. You know, in a way it's a compliment. It's like saying, well, you know, you've got to look at it positively, haven't you? To say, you know, look, it's better than the curse of indifference. Okay.
So we're going to bring Tom and Neil down now to make the award of the Bradford International Film Festival.
On behalf of the festival, Sally, the Fellowship Award to you.
Thank you. This is such an honour, and I really want to say that this is a wonderful media museum with an extraordinary history and extraordinary interesting things in it. A museum of the past, but also a real look into the cinematic future. So it is a great, great honour for me. I thank you very, very much indeed.